Hey there! Thank you for tuning into Duckbricks, and welcome to Ninjago Legacy Lookback, where I take a look at some of the Legacy sets and how they compare to their predecessors. This is part of an ongoing series where I am doing a mega review of every single LEGO Ninjago wave. Last time we took a look at Season 14, The Island, in review, and for this year's wave of Legacy sets, I decided to split up the video into taking a look at each set individually, and then do a wrap-up video at the end. So today the focus is on Cole's Boulder Blaster, or the Roto Jet as it was called in the show. This year's 2021 set retailed for $40, while the previous set from 2015 for Tournament of Elements retailed for $30. It is definitely a big upgrade, but now let's take a look at the review studio to see how they compare against each other.
Alright, so next up we have Cole's Roto Jet, or the Boulder Blaster as it's called by LEGO. This set was introduced in 2015 for Tournament of Elements and retailed for $30 US. This set was introduced in 2021 for the Legacy line and retailed for $40 US, which was a $10 price increase from the previous iteration. You can immediately see as well that one is much larger than the other. The previous set came with 3 minifigures, an exclusive jungle version of Cole, as well as 2 Anacondri warriors. The newer set introduces 4 minifigures, 2 jungle versions of Cole and Lloyd, as well as the Izor minifigure that we've seen many times as well in this review, as well as a Golden Kai minifigure celebrating 10 years of Ninjago. Both sets included a side build of a bit of Anacondri scenery. Unfortunately, I was unable to locate my side build for this set. I believe it was literally just a pillar on a 2x6 plate, so honestly I probably disassembled it. This side build though is a lot more beefy than the previous one, and includes a full-on jail cell to be targeted by the Roto Jet to be opened like so. Bonus points if you knock over the villain minifigure while doing so. So, at least in terms of this set, unlike previous sets, the minifigure distribution is relatively even. We only get one more minifigure for this one, and it's basically just a special one for Legacy. However, I do question the inclusion of the Tournament Legacy Lloyd. I feel like if you're going to include a jail cell in Tournament of Elements, why would you not make a Zane version of this figure and put a tournament version of Zane inside the jail cell? Feels like that makes a lot more sense Legacy speaking, but maybe they didn't have the budget to put in one additional minifigure, although that does feel a little bit strange to me. Moving on, of course, though, from the minifigures, which we'll set aside right now, nothing too crazy going on with those. Specifically, I want to compare and contrast the 2 Roto Jets. So immediately, as you can see here, one of them sits far higher above the ground than the other. The newer one is a lot beefier and includes some brick-built side winglets as well, instead of just using a standard prefab piece with a sticker on it. As you can probably see, the firing circumference is a lot larger as well. It uses a larger style wheel hub piece instead of the smaller wheel hub. If we point them directly straight, you can immediately see that the larger one has a much larger, radius of firing than the previous one, which isn't necessarily a pro or a con. I mean, it works literally the same way. It's just something to note that this one is a lot bigger. Moving on to the back wings though, and I think that's where the biggest price increase goes. If you look at the previous one, it literally is just using the standard 1 thickness plate wings here, basically the most standard wings that you could use for something like this. Whereas the newer version is actually several plates thick and also includes a really nice coloration of an orange stripe along the side of the wing here, kind of gives it a unique flair, has a much more detailed stickered piece on the back here to signify some decals on the wings, and actually introduces the Sons of Garmadon blade piece recolored in gold for some sort of detail along the sides of the wings instead of just using the standard wing piece. When you put both of them to the side, you'll notice that just like the previous one, the newer one has a handle. However, on the older one, you could actually take the handle and bend it downwards, so you could have a full handle to hold on the older one. The newer one just has this one handle and it is fixed, you can't bend it downwards, but it works just fine, so that's alright. What I also like about the newer one is that, again, it sits higher off of the ground because it actually does feature a landing skid. Underneath here, this is just a very simple landing skid to allow it to sit with the handle deployed, unlike this one, which had the handle actually retract inwards to allow you to place it down on the ground. The newer one just feels a little bit more realistic as a Roto Jet rather than this one, which doesn't have a clear place to land. What's also immediately interesting about the newer one is that it features this brand new dual molded cockpit element. Now, when this set first came out, a lot of people were kind of confused as to why it got this brand new cockpit element for a set which in the show did not have a cockpit like this at all. In fact, the cockpit was much closer to this in the show as it was to this. Well, as we saw later on, this is actually a sneaky new mold from the Ninjago Seabound wave coming out later this summer for season 15. It seems like they just didn't have the mold budget to justify creating a new windscreen mold for that season, so they threw it in the winter wave almost arbitrarily, just to say that, hey, we're using the budget to put this piece here, but it's actually been designed for Seabound. Kind of a sneaky way it seems the designers have gotten away with including one more mold for the summer wave of sets, so kind of funny to see that. And again, despite not being show accurate, this does add a lot of visual flair to the cockpit here and makes it really do stand out. The other thing I really like about this is that instead of just using a standard wheel piece around the engine, they actually have a brick-built engine here featuring a lot of unique and fine detail. You've got some rifle pieces as engines here, you've got a black sloped armor piece which debuted last year for the front of the jet, and all in all, this just feels like a much more solid engine than this piece here, which was clearly just a wheel mounted around it. That being said though, my question is, was the upgrade justified? Does this having more detail really offer that much more over this? And the question is, honestly, it really depends on your point of view. You see, this is a $10 increase over the previous set, but for all intents and purposes, the function works literally exactly the same way. The amount of bullets fired are the exact same. You essentially could have bought this set, and for all intents and purposes, it does the same exact thing as this set. This one doesn't really do anything much different other than giving it a little bit more of a cohesive color scheme by introducing the orange, having a lot more detailed and beefier engine segment, and having thicker wings with a little bit of a bigger decal on them compared to the older version. Was this really justified for a remake though? Maybe, maybe not, but I guess if you're gonna do a Cole vehicle to celebrate Tournament of Elements, this is the one to remake. Honestly though, I really just wish that instead of maybe getting this, perhaps it would have been nicer to get something that we never actually got in set format, such as Cole's Elemental Dragon, which debuted also in the Tournament of Elements season, or maybe even some other thing dedicated to Cole which never actually appeared in these sets. Still, it is really nice for anyone who does not already own the previous version. This is a perfectly good set and is very much an upgrade. It's not a major upgrade like many other sets, but part of that is due to the fact that this set wasn't too bad to begin with. This just makes some minor incremental improvements rather than redoing the entire set in a much better way. But now, moving outside the original set, having that fly off screen here, let's just focus in on this Roto Jet or Boulder Blaster as it is right now as a set as a whole. In terms of the value of the set, it's $40 and comes with 4 minifigures, which is pretty standard, I will say. I wouldn't really expect any more minifigures, but I, again, kind of wish that they included a different Anacon Drycultist rather than just the standard Izor, which you can see here. Maybe had a Zane Legacy minifigure instead of Lloyd. Just little things like that, but this is a pretty good representation of the vehicle and definitely has a very fun function for people who didn't own the original set already. All in all, in terms of value, for $40, I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. I do really feel like you could have just remade the set at the same price point of $30, probably pulled off a very similar thing while still adding in extra detail. At most, maybe $35, but $40 definitely feels like it's pushing it just a little bit. And honestly, you can immediately see that by how beefy the side build is. I think that the more beefy the side build, the more clear of an indication it is that maybe what you're paying for the made set isn't 100% worth what you're paying for. Monkey Kid does this a lot where they have a big vehicle, they charge a ton of money for it, but then they have a ton of other side builds, and it's really clear that they were just putting the additional set budget into the side builds, which really honestly are fine on their own, but I would have rather had either all this parts budget go into creating a very focused set or having it depict a different subject entirely. That being said though, this set is by no means a bad set. I do really like the unique design of it, and the upgrades to the original form of the set are certainly significant, just nothing that blows my mind away like say the Spinjitzu Dojo or the Monastery transformation from the previous Legacy lines. In terms of build quality though, just to wrap this thing up, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I think the build in and of itself is really good. Maybe not necessarily worth the $40 price, but it is a really fun set to play with, to swoosh around, to fire, just a really fun set overall, and definitely for people who did not own the original one, this is a major upgrade. So if you don't own the original one, I would highly recommend getting this one.
Alright, well I hope you enjoyed this video. That about sums up the comparisons and quick review of the Boulder Blaster. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of this set? Is it an upgrade, is it a downgrade, or are you happy with the original set? And definitely stay tuned for our next Legacy Lookback video where we'll be covering Kai's X1 Ninja Charger. Thanks all for tuning in, and bye bye for now.